Hey everybody, good morning. Happy Wednesday to you. I've got my cup of coffee here, that Guatemalan roast we bought a couple pounds of beans with, and still drinking on that this morning. Got my cup. Hope you have your cup or whatever in this mid-morning time gives you that pick-me-up to get you through and on the rest of the day. I was thinking it's an interesting week. In general, I was thinking how much has gone on or is going on this week. Certainly last Sunday, one of the big things was the Super Bowl, the end of the football season, professional football, Super Bowl. My team won, the one I was rooting for, not my team. Bucks are my team, but I was rooting for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they pulled it off. I love to tell you, I sat on the edge of my seat, gripped by every minute of what was a good and close game, but true confessions is we were watching it. And I watched the Eagles tie it late, and then I kind of dozed off and woke up just in time to see the winning kick. So I missed the big penalty that was so controversial that allowed the Chiefs to kind of run down the clock. But nonetheless, I was happy to see that the team I was rooting for won. So that was kind of a big day, and many people, have lots of celebration, ate too much, just like we did that night to do that, maybe a party of some sort. And then yesterday, I should say, was Valentine's, and a lot of people celebrate that. Maybe you had a nice dinner out or did something to celebrate Valentine's Day. And then this weekend is a holiday weekend. It's President's Day. So this week, and here in the Keys, you add to that the fact that we're really in the peak of our season down here, where just about as many people as are going to be here all the time are outside of big holiday weekends. And it's a busy time with a lot going on, a lot to do. And so just kind of an interesting week to think about that. Of course, the highlight for many was probably yesterday, Valentine's Day. I think President's Day weekend, just a 3-day weekend, but Valentine's a little more personal. So I had a wild hair, you might say, and I was thinking, why do we celebrate Valentine's Day? I mean, today we know it as a celebration of romantic love, all that goes with it, cards and flowers and candy and whatnot, usually dinner of some kind, some romantic gestures that are made between couples. For us, it was an important day. I asked Denise to marry me on Valentine's Day. Gosh, how many years ago was that? I guess almost 34 years ago. Yeah, a little over 34 years ago yesterday. So we enjoyed the day. It's a very memorable one for us. But I thought, why do we celebrate? It's a fascinating story. I won't bore you with all the details, but it's an interesting evolution. It actually goes back. Its name comes from a Catholic saint, maybe being raised in the Baptist tradition where saints aren't really a part of our normal education or training or worship in any way. We don't think about saints the way some of the more liturgical traditions do, and primarily Catholicism does. There is a Saint Valentine after whom the holiday is named, but part of what I understand is the reason it's February 14th that it's celebrated has to do with his martyrdom or burial, one of those, martyred back in the 3rd century AD. So very early in the history of the church, just a couple hundred years after Jesus was around, was this individual. Actually, there may be two I read, named Valentine, because Valentine is a very popular name. Actually, I think somebody in one of the things I read, there are several saints that are named Valentine because I think it means valor. It means, that sort of an idea. So it's a name that would be popular as a character quality. And so there are several, but the one in question, or maybe one of two in question, is in the late 3rd century that was martyred and buried on Valentine's Day, and it came to be celebrated for that. Now, interestingly, like many holidays, there was a bit of a pagan background to it, that the Roman Church, after Constantine and as the Roman Church became more officially Christian, the Roman Empire became more officially Christian, wanted to redeem some of those pagan holidays and attach to them a Christian meaning. And so that was one of the motivations around adding St. Valentine and this idea of love to that, though maybe not in the way that we think of it today. And that's the interesting thing of history, that there was a pagan holiday 2,000 years ago that the church came in and tried to, through the martyrdom of St. Valentine, and that put a religious emphasis on it, that today most of that religious emphasis At least from our perspective and in our tradition, there's not much of a, Easter, Christmas, those sorts of things. We have religious connotations and emphases to these holidays, but Valentine's Day we don't really think about much, even though it takes its name from a Catholic saint. So interesting, the back and forth from pagan holiday to religious holiday, now back to really a secular holiday for most, about love and romance and its various sorts and kinds. And so I hope, however you celebrated, it was a good day and you got to spend it with someone that you care about and love very much, as we spent our time together yesterday and went out to dinner last night. But one of the emphases obviously is love, and one of the ways that we might think about it, if I can twist again, if we go from pagan holiday to Christian emphasis to more of a secular holiday today, to how can we look at it through the lens of faith, is just the emphasis on love itself is central to the Christian faith. They'll know we are Christians by our love. God is love. These are things that the Bible tells us, that the Bible teaches about God and who we are. Love, the two greatest commandments. Love the Lord your God, which is fascinating, right? The greatest commandment is to love the Lord your God. And the second one is likened to it, Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. The two greatest commandments. There are a lot of things that could be considered the greatest commandment. A lot of words that might go in place of love: serve, obey, worship, give. Who knows what might have been put there. But love is the great commandment that Jesus emphasized right out of the foundational confession of the Hebrew Bible and the Israelites, from Deuteronomy 6, the Shema, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you should love the Lord your God. Right out of there becomes the key commandment for Jesus, the greatest commandment. And when we do those things, when we keep those two commandments, I love this part, no pun intended, right? To love God and love your neighbor, Jesus makes the point that all the rest is taken care of. If we would get those two down, all the rest would be taken care of. That's easier said than done. Because if we're honest, and particularly as we're thinking about a view of Valentine's Day, and really the cultural view or definition, for lack of a better word, of what love is, I would say that most of the ways people understand love is selfish. Love for many people is a selfish perspective. It's what I feel in my attraction or feelings toward another person. It's how that individual makes me respond in a positive way. And so it easily can become very self-centered. But actually the beauty of the love of God, as demonstrated through Jesus, who came and lived his life as an example for us, is that his love was constantly self-sacrificing. It was always a giving love. And in fact, some of the things we talk about often when we look at wedding ceremonies, there are texts that we use that emphasize that aspect of love. We talk about sometimes the different words in Greek for love, and the highest form we often say is that agape love, that it's unconditional is the traditional definition. I don't like that definition. I think agape love, to say unconditional, I don't think that's the best way to describe it. I'll leave it at that. I like two other words. I think agape love is, number one, intentional, and number two, sacrificial. So those are my two word definitions for agape love. It's an intentional love. It's an act of your intent, an act of the will. It's not, in fact, simply an emotion. Kind of one of those old school, how do you define love? I don't remember where I read this or heard this, but one definition is this: love is a feeling you feel when you feel a feeling you've never felt before. That there's something unique, we think, about that feeling of love. But I think the emphasis of God's kind of love and of the love Jesus demonstrated is that it's not emotional. It might result in emotional realities, but it is more than emotion. It is intent. It is volitional. It is a choice. It is a decision. It is an action. To love somebody isn't a feeling. It expresses itself in how you treat them and how you act toward them. So agape, the highest form of love, I think, is meant to be intentional or volitional. And then secondly, it's meant to be sacrificial. One of the most well-known verses in all of the Bible is John 3:16. And if you have been, like I have, in church most of your life, you probably memorized that, or certainly were offered the chance to at a young age. And if you remember, it starts very simply. For God so loved the world that he gave. And it goes on to tell us who he gave was Jesus, his one and only Son. Love is sacrificial. Love gives of itself. And when we think about God's kind of love was intentional. It was volitional. It wasn't just about emotion. It wasn't just Jesus found people that always made him feel good about himself and who he just felt positive about. No, he was around people that sometimes frustrated him. And he, at times in love, rebuked them. But ultimately, he was willing to sacrifice, to serve them, and to sacrifice himself for them. And so maybe that old school Catholic idea, that Catholic Saint Valentine, that it was his martyrdom, it was his sacrificial gift of his life to further the cause of the kingdom of God, is a great example for Valentine's Day. That it is about intent, it's about choice, it's about action, and it's about sacrifice. So I hope that might be something to give you some food for thought. It certainly would, in my view, go against the common picture of how love is portrayed, whether it's through all of the marketing that goes around for a holiday like Valentine's Day, or whether it's how it's portrayed culturally or how we perceive it and define it in and of ourselves. I think, as with anything, the challenge we have as Christians, as followers of God through Jesus Christ, is to define those terms based upon who God is and what Jesus gave us as an example. And so when we talk about the two greatest commandments, to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind and strength, well, that's intentional, that's volitional, that's an act, that's a decision. To love God with all your heart, we think that's emotion maybe, but it's not just your heart. With all your heart, with all your soul, with all that you are, we would say, with all your mind. It's a way of thinking, of reprogramming how you think and relate, and with all your strength. There's exertion there. Maybe that goes into sacrifice, that to love God and to love one another as we love ourselves will involve intent and sacrifice. And I hope that quick word that we shared today on the heels of yesterday and Valentine's Day, in the midst of what is a busy time of year, particularly for us in the Keys, will give you not only food for thought today, but some encouragement as you go about the rest of your day. I'm going to let you go. I'm sure you got plenty to do, as do I. And so I hope to see you maybe on Sunday. We'll be here 9 a.m. We're getting toward the end of the book of Acts. Looking forward to covering that and closing that down over the next few weeks. And of course, tonight we'll do our New Testament study. We'll be, of all places, talking about the book of Acts tonight. So tonight in an hour, I'm going to talk about the book of Acts that I've been talking about on Sunday mornings for a year and a half. I don't know how I'm going to summarize it. Obviously, it's a different purpose, but I think that'll be kind of fun to try to put that together and talk about that tonight. So if you'd like to join us for either one of those, love to have you do it in person. Certainly, we'll be here tonight at 6 in the hall, or on Sundays at 9 in worship, or we have those online through Zoom, or we post them on our website. So we'd love to have you connect with us any of those ways. So let me, again, I said I was going to let you go and I didn't. I kept talking, but I'm for real this time. I'm going to say goodbye. Happy Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day.